Endgame automates the hunt for both known and never-before-seen adversaries in enterprise networks. Built on unique knowledge on the adversary's tools, techniques, and tactics, Endgame's centrally managed agent prevents, detects, and responds to advanced adversaries in the earliest stages of the kill chain without prior knowledge. Endgame, automate the hunt. Today's determined attackers easily bypass even the most advanced network defenses. Trying to ramp up staff to detect their backdoors can cost thousands of dollars and take months, even years. With Active Countermeasures AI Hunter, we enable junior analysts to detect even the most advanced backdoors in a matter of hours. Sign up for a demo and purchase our product today by visiting activecountermeasures.com/PSW. Active Countermeasures. Make every analyst a hunter. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul Security Weekly. This is the security news for this week. I want to remind everyone, you can go to securityweekly.com/on-demand. Just recorded the next installment of our on-demand series today, not to be missed, on Active Directory vulnerabilities and defenses with Clayton Fields from Javelin Networks and Gabriel Gums from Stealth Bits. You should definitely go watch this one. If you have Active Directory in your environment, which I'm told is roughly 90% of the organizations today, you got to go watch this. We talk about all the common vulnerabilities and exposures, because a lot of them aren't really vulnerabilities. They're just like business as usual. If you're running Active Directory, insecure by design, we talk about all those things. And Gabriel and Clayton both talk to so many different enterprises about the Active Directory security problem, as that's primarily who their customers are. And they're both very involved with their customers in that respect. So their insights are not to be missed. It's very good. So, what else did I want to say? Oh, I was going to lead in with Tenable IPO today.
I think it's a great one.
Yeah, let's start there.
Start there, right?
Let's lift a glass.
Lift a glass. Congratulations, Tenable, former employee of myself and Jeff.
And former sponsor of the show.
That's right.
Who have served us well, both as friends, family, and sponsors for many years.
I just want to congratulate them for being IPO. It was a long journey to get there, certainly. It was awesome to be part of that journey. Certainly, even before I worked there, they were a sponsor of the show first. Then I worked there. Jack, of course, still works there. Jeff worked there. Matt Alderman was my boss. I don't know if people like pick this up from bits and pieces on the shows. Matt Alderman was my boss at Tenable. There's some funny stories.
And for me, from a customer outsider perspective, so many interactions with Ron and Renault over the years, and you.
Yeah.
Paul, put in a feature request. So many times.
It's one of the things I actually miss is being that conduit and that evangelist and that connection between Tenable and the community, and fielding questions from people like Larry and others that are using the product, going, we should really have this feature. I'm like, I know I'm working on that feature. Like, I'll work on it. Let me talk to Renault for you.
And it was like, oh, shit, that's awesome. Let me talk to Renault.
But what's awesome is a lot of those features have been added or were added at the time. And then even after I left, some of those things that we were suggesting ended up in the product. Of course, much of the team has changed. I mean, it's no secret. You can go on LinkedIn and see, like, who's left there and stuff. But obviously that, growth of the company, there's going to be some turnover, and that's normal. And I love all the connections I made at Tenable. I had funny stories about how I got to work for Matt. Like, he came on, I was kind of like, what the hell is this guy? And then, like, not too long after, I'm like, can I come work for you in your group? It's kind of how it went. And of course, Matt's at Layered Insight, who's a sponsor of the show today. Matt will be at Black Hat with us, helping us doing some of the briefings and interviews and interrogations, but interviewing people at the booths at Black Hat. So he's one of our analysts now, which is weird because he sort of works for me now. But he's also a sponsor, so I still sort of work for him as well. So
it's a very incestuous relationship. And think about the first time Ron was ever on the show. Do you remember that?
I'm glad we haven't talked about that in a while.
So
I don't know if everyone's really got the full story.
So this is many years ago when we were recording the show in
Ron still hired me too. So and Ron is the person that hired me at Tenable. I was very honored that Ron had done that, and I actually put him off for not put him off, but I said, oh, you know, I know you're looking for someone. Let me see who I can find. And then actually a couple of months later, I called him up. I'm like, dude, I'll apply for that, sure. And lo and behold, I got the job there. But before that, I knew Ron. The reason Ron and I were talking and knew each other was because he came on the show. We did a recording at like an undisclosed location.
That undisclosed location was the conference room at the hospital group that I worked for that was exactly next door to my office.
Yes.
And we trucked all the recording gear in after hours.
Including like a massive load of beer. Yes. I mean like massive.
Do you remember what we were drinking?
It was high alcohol content.
St. Bernardus ABT 12.
And all I remember is Joe Conlon, who was a host for a short time, long time ago on the show. Love Joe. Awesome. Love Twitch. It was in those days of Twitchy and Joe Conlon. Love those guys. More than welcome to come back on the show. Love you guys. Miss you. And Joe was just giving me the never-ending beer glass during the like before the interview and during the interview. I just had this I'm like, why am I'm never running out of beer in my glass? Because Joe just kept like filling up my glass, and then I was
by the end of that interview
slurring my speech.
You were slurring your words, and it was brilliant.
Slurring my words.
We were. Darren was there too because afterwards. Yes. You, Darren, and myself went to TGI Fridays for dinner, and we were all shit-faced.
Hungry and shit-faced.
Yes.
Yes.
Good times. And other quick one about Tenable.
Yeah.
Over the years, do you know how many people think that I worked for Tenable?
Oh, really?
All of them.
That's how entrenched it was in our culture. Yeah. Sure. I can, well, because at the time, like, largely it was me, you, and Jack.
Yeah.
And Jeff. And Tenable was a sponsor.
3 out of the 4 worked for Tenable.
So 3 out of the 4 worked for Tenable, and they were a sponsor, so I can see where people would draw that conclusion.
Oh, can you put the feature request in? I'm like, no, you got to go to Paul for that. I'm like, what? You don't work for Tenable? I'm like, no, I haven't. I
never knew that. That's hilarious.
So many people thought I worked for Tenable.
Yeah.
So many people.
Yeah, I'm happy for him. It's awesome, awesome day to see that happen. To know that a company you worked for and that we supported.
So just to feel a part of the conversation.
Sorry, Jeff.
Jeff.
Ron. Since Ron and I have known each other, I think about 25 years now. He and I met when he came to work in the office at NSA where I worked, which became a few years later, people might have heard of this thing called the Pit. Mm-hmm. We were charter members, and
otherwise now known as what? Did that evolve into TAO?
I don't know what it devolved into.
Yes, you weren't there.
There's
right?
speculation as
well. I wasn't there.
Yeah,
the Pit.
But we were the first pen testing team at NSA.
Did Ron ever mention to you, Jeff, because you've known him longer, about that drunken? Did Ron ever mention to you like that drunken podcast host once?
Nope. Ron is really good about just letting people be and letting people form their own opinions about other people, and he likes everybody.
And what's awesome is we still get to work with Ron today. We're advertising for several of the companies he invests in. Ron spent some time here in the studio. We recorded segments. Oh, he was here on Paul's Security Weekly as well that night. I think he had to leave to catch his flight, but he was here for a good portion of the show.
Awesome.
So it's nice to still have Ron around.
You want to hear another one? It's a good thing that he's not here. Do you remember the day that you, myself...
Oh, no, you're not going to tell the pee in the... You're going to tell the pee in the pool story, aren't you?
You already did it. You already did it. Oh, that time when you, me, and Darren...
No, I did not pee in the pool. I just want to go on record as saying I did not pee in the pool.
That time that you, me, and Darren, and myself went to Ron's house. Yes. He had us over for dinner. We went swim in the pool. We're all sitting in the hot tub. Darren peed in the pool.
Wow, that's out there now.
And the sad part is
there's no taking that back now.
He told me later. He's like, Ron's a pretty savvy dude. Like, I just let out a little bit to see if the water turned green first.
That's a myth. The water doesn't turn.
But he did.
But he did because you never know. Like, it's Ron. Like, it could.
Oh, he's like, I let a little out first to see if the water turned green. I was looking and it didn't turn green because I really had to pee.
Sorry, Ron. Sorry. Ron doesn't live in that particular house anymore, so it's someone else's pool.
That's a whole different pool.
A whole different pool now.
Yeah. Welcome to our ool. You'll notice there's no pee in it.
Unless you're Darren and you're at Ron Cool's house.
Oh shit.
Oh, wow.
Darren, you made your mark on history today, man.
Literally, it's made its mark. Wow. I
this
thought
is a good friend of yours, I trust.
I thought that was going to go to the graves with us, but now
Nope.
I'm going to get a phone call from Ron. It'll be all good. It'll be all good.
But you know that.
More importantly, I'm going to need a call from Cindy, who's Ron's wife, and be like, what?
More importantly, you're going to get a call from Ron via Cindy and be like, dude, I pee in it all the time.
Yeah, right.
Just Cindy asked me to call you. I know she pees in it all the time too. So do the kids, and it's fine. I gotta make the call.
Wow. Well, that was story time with Security Weekly. Won't be doing that segment anymore.
Where's the music?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, that went well. What's going on this week?
Cosco was breached. Apparently, it's a shipping container company.
Okay. Oh,
ransomware.
Yeah, that Costco, not Costco. Costco.
Yeah. It's easy to confuse.
Yes, and I confuse that all the time because I spend a decent amount of time in Seattle, and Seattle's one of the major shipping ports. And you see the Costco, like, damn, Costco imports a lot of shit. Oh, yeah, right, wrong
different
Costco,
company,
wrong Costco. Yeah.
Ransomware. I don't know.
So what happened?
I don't know. I didn't read the story.
Ransomware.
I'll be completely honest. I want to talk about the Bluetooth bug.
Yeah,
that's really. I'll set the stage, Larry, and say that it was disappointing. I don't think it's a big deal at all, except every major news outlet was covering this major Bluetooth vulnerability. And after I read it, I was like, so it's been patched in most stuff already, and it only affects certain chipsets. It doesn't affect Android, although jury's still out on that.
It's mostly the chipsets. And Broadcom and Intel are some of the major manufacturers.
And this is which to a certificate, right? Basically, I can determine the private key and decrypt Bluetooth communications.
Basically,
I'm stealing your thunder, Larry. Please talk about
it's totally fine. And really, that's what it is that the first step of the chain for creating the certificates for encrypting and authenticating Bluetooth traffic was left up to the manufacturers, the OEMs, to figure out whether or not they wanted to trust that information.
It's amazing how much of our learning process in security comes down to if you leave too much to be decided by the implementer of an RFC or a given standard, how that leads to security vulnerabilities sounds like this is the case.
Yep. So to sum this whole Bluetooth thing up, you have to be in close proximity. You have to catch the pairing still. There's lots of things that go into this.
Is there a disassociation attack for Bluetooth similar to Wi-Fi?
There is, but no one has been able to successfully implement it.
Really?
Yes. So,
well, that's interesting.
So at any time, a client can issue a LMP not accepted claimant. LMP not accepted message, which is effectively a DOS.
Josh covered this in 2005?
Yes, if not before. LMP not accepted. With an LMP not accepted, claimant has no link key. Meaning, we were paired once, I have no key, can we repair? It's basically a Bluetooth low energy, Bluetooth and Bluetooth low energy DOS. But no one has been able to successfully implement that yet. Mike Ryan, of Crackle fame and so forth, and How Smart is Bluetooth Smart, which is Bluetooth low energy. He's also the code developer and code maintainer for the Bluetooth low energy tree for HackRF? No, for the Ubertooth 1.
Okay.
So, smart dude has not been able to successfully implement the attack yet. And he's been trying for years. I don't know if he's given up or what. But there is that DOS possibility. There's also other great opportunities for catching that stuff. In any case, you still have to catch the pairing, and there's lots of things that restrict what you can actually do. But I was
so like many cryptographic related attacks, it's more a theoretical until somebody can actually do it. And in many cases, there has to be planets aligned and very very convoluted convoluted maybe it's not the best word, but very, very specific circumstances where it all comes together and actually works.
Agreed. And no, the planets don't need to be aligned. The planets just need to be in the right places, within some gross proximity. If you were going to do the planets aligned thing, but so I'm on an email thread with the Sans News Bite folks. So hopefully,
did you really just refine my metaphor?
I think I did. So Sans News Bites folks. I'm going to maybe blow the wad from Josh a little bit. But I'm on an email thread with Josh about this very thing with Sans. And Josh had this great scenario about this whole, what ultimately came down to this attack, and it's in the show notes, and it was SIG Engineer 1 and SIG Engineer 2, and SIG is the Bluetooth Special Interest Group. Mm-hmm. So SIG Engineer 1, hey, do you think it's important to validate the public key during pairing that establishes the foundational cryptographic principles that protect all subsequent authentication and traffic over the Bluetooth connection, Bluetooth Low Energy connection? SIG Engineer 2, nah, let's leave that up to the OEM to decide whether they
validate the public key or not.
Whether they validate the public key or not. SIG Engineer 2, Engineer 1, cool. Want to get a donut? Like, they left this foundational thing up to the
implementer.
The implementer decide whether they wanted to trust the public key or not.
And as we established in our interview with Dean from Digisort, when we're talking about these IoT devices, especially any device that incorporates Bluetooth, which is freaking like everything now, right? It's about low cost and first to market. So when you're an engineer, you could probably construct a similar conversation between two engineers that are implementing the standard.
Yes.
Like, hey, did you read that standard? Yeah, like I read that standard. Like it says that validating this public key is optional. Like, do you think we should bother? Like, no, dude, we can totally save a lot of code and produce it much faster if we just ignore that altogether.
OEM Engineer 1 and OEM Engineer 2,
exactly,
right? Right.
Totally. Like, want to get a donut?
Totally. But then they developed Bluetooth Low Energy, Bluetooth 4, and then Bluetooth 5. And the Bluetooth Special Interest Group didn't fix anything. They didn't.
They're like, hey, do you want to validate the... They're like, no, we've been down that road before.
OEM.
Like, let's go get donuts now.
Donuts. Lots of donuts.
But there's another... I'm not trying to defend donut eaters, but, there's another way of looking at this. Yes, it's the path of least resistance. It's lazy, maybe. It's a business decision. But how much different is it from sort of the generation ago where... the idea of putting out a desktop or a laptop or a server or workstation, and everything's turned on because you want it to be easy to use, easy to set up, cut down on your support calls, and I think there's a parallel here. Maybe it's a little bit more obviously, maybe we'll call it lazy or irresponsible, but you could make the argument that they're just trying to get it out there and make it easy for people to work. And most consumers aren't worried; they just want to turn on the Bluetooth on whatever it is that they have, and they want it to work.
And Jeff, I'll argue with you. Maybe not so much lazy, but very much a design consideration at the time. As in, if we want to validate the public key, let's let the OEM decide. And the OEM is going to be implementing this code on their chipset. And depending on the speed of their chipset and the capabilities of their chipset at the time when Bluetooth came out, this might be very much a computationally intensive task that they may want to eliminate from their process so that Bluetooth works faster.
I completely agree.
I can get that.
I am, being a nerd and around technology my entire life, pretty much. I started when I was 7, right? Like, I'm still kind of amazed the functionality they put inside of devices that uses Bluetooth. Like, I got the Bose Sound Sport earbud things, right? And they've got Bluetooth in it. And the Bluetooth, especially on the Bose stuff, is awesome. Like, it pairs every single time. There's no connectivity issues.
Unlike my Apple keyboards?
Yeah. Functionality-wise, they are just awesome. And all the technology is in the tiny earbuds, so I can definitely see where you're making sacrifices there in terms of to get better functionality and usability. It's like I said, we could have a whole show on headphones and headsets, right? And we get asked all the time for podcast recommendations. But And so I've used a lot of them. I tell you what, like the implementation is friggin' awesome.
But maybe chose not to include this.
But maybe chose not to include security in light of usability.
Right, as a move forward from code optimization that happened in 2005, when the playing field was significantly different.
True.
And I totally understand why this has potentially moved forward. It is a hindsight being 2020 problem.
Right. But now, focus on this vulnerability specifically. Largely, this has been fixed. Already pushed it. Well, they've pushed out code updates. Whether people have applied them or not is remain to be seen.
It's largely been patched, updated. Whether they've applied them or not, this is the conundrum.
And whether it affects Android or not. When I looked at the NVD entry, it was like unknown. It listed Android as like unknown. I'm like, what do you mean unknown? Like, is it vulnerable or not?
Well, Android runs on how many different platforms? With how many different
versions in versions of Android,
and how many different chipsets?
Yep,
unknown.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, so that's what they could say because they know Apple has a specific chipset, specific code, right?
or limited chipsets that run the specific code. So that's really where it comes down to. Okay, I think we've beaten that one to death.
And we talked about Google Chrome already.
Yes,
it's nice. We covered that one already.
And I did confirm mine did update to 5.8, and I am looking at wiki.securityweekly.com right now, and it says secure. And I went to hacksharethematrix.com, HTTP, and it says not secure. Okay, first step.
So it works.
It does as intended. That's okay because and I wanted to mention this during then in Paul. We talked about a bunch of hosting providers. I'm taking a little bit different tact about hosting a bunch of websites that I currently maintain. GitHub.io. GitHub offers website hosting. And I'm actually going to migrate my blog to a blog at GitHub.io. That's all published via Git.
So you're going to host it with Microsoft?
Yeah.
Why not?
GitHub and Microsoft. Who's going to do a better job of protecting that infrastructure, them or me?
Yeah, I didn't get the whole backlash on Microsoft buying Git. And you bring up an extremely valid point, in my opinion, Larry, is that who better, what larger software companies are there? Microsoft's one of the major players. Who can put more funding and resources behind a project like GitHub than Microsoft? And I don't agree with people that think Microsoft hates open source. I think it's the complete opposite. And we've had quite the contrary be stated by people who represent Microsoft, and they're totally embracing it. So I don't get it, and I think that's a really cool spot to host your website.
So I'm gonna give my blog a shot there, and then maybe I'll move other stuff there.
Yeah, I'm
mostly because I don't want to update my WordPress anymore.
I've gone to
my movable type.
I've gone to a WordPress hosting provider that we mentioned earlier, which I'm really liking so far. Again, I got some of my smaller sites on actually next week. Just a heads up, like if stuff doesn't work on Security Weekly, it's because I'm breaking shit. And if you notice a broken link on any of our websites, like pay attention to that. If you notice anything weird, please send it to me or our team, psw@securityweekly.com.
Is there a bounty?
Yeah, I'll send people Hack Naked shirts and Security Weekly swag. If you find a valid problem with what I'm about to cut over, absolutely.
After you cut over?
No, if you find a valid problem, whether I'm in the process of cutting over, right? Because you do it slow. Like there's a bunch of other they're production, but like non-Security Weekly domains, right, that we're redirecting. So I've cut some of that stuff over to start testing the platform, and then we'll do the big cut over. I'm moving a lot of our infrastructure around. Essentially, to your point, Larry, what I'm doing is trying to free up my time so that I can take certain applications and start playing around with serverless and containers, so I can spend some more time learning that technology, which I think is the future and need to know to host the shows and have valid commentary on it. So I'm trying to push off some of my other traditional stuff. I am keeping some more traditional virtual instances at certain providers that I'll still maintain. In fact, you're going to see our DNS that we covered in a technical segment for Pi-hole, basically switching providers, really just for costing, and I need to update that environment, so I just rebuilt it from scratch in the new provider. So a lot of those changes are going to be taking effect next week. So if something breaks, please, again, let us know. If you find something that we needed to fix, we'll send you some swag.
Yeah,
Hey,
absolutely.
before we get too far away from
be
it,
gentle. Be gentle. The not official bug bounty program, but
right.
be respectful and be gentle.
hey, real quickly, a response to your rhetorical question of who better to protect it than Microsoft. I don't disagree with that, but I will say I have heard that before, and I'll leave it at that.
Yep.
I agree, Jeff, but I think that the GitHub acquisition is strategic for Microsoft, and so they're going to want to keep everyone happy because of the strategic nature, I think, of that acquisition and how it plays into their Azure cloud and become part of the DevOps process and such.
Well, and they're not a telecom, so let's move on.
That's true. That's true.
Or a hosting provider.
Yeah, anyway. Jeff says that like he wants to change subjects, so I'll honor your tone, Jeff. And
I mean, I don't want to dwell on it.
Yeah, I know. I agree.
They'll probably do a great job, but I have heard that before.
Sure.
And you know, how many times have you heard, wow, that company got popped? You'd never expect them.
So, speaking of getting popped, skills that a next-level pen tester should have. Larry, I don't know if you saw this.
I have not seen this one, but I do have
We'll go through some of the headlines.
I'd like to hear this one.
I'll be honest, I didn't read this in as much detail as I should have. However, you know, skimming through it and looking at the headlines, I think there's some interesting things in here. Certainly says they focus on the business logic and business impact.
Yep. We've been saying that for a long time.
I don't think that's next level. I think that's table stakes. Like if you can't, I think you're doing a disservice in calling it a penetration test if you're not focused on the business logic and the business impact. Jeff, I know you absolutely agree with that, right? Like pen test for the sake of pointing out vulnerabilities is not really a pen test.
Yeah, I don't think a pen test is for vulnerability discovery, period.
Right.
Yep. All right. So the author here, I think he's hitting on a valuable thing, the focus on business logic and business impact. I mean, that's table stakes. You really need to be doing that now, but as you said, this one is the essential rule. You should have been doing this a long time ago.
Yep.
And this is really it. Understand what the business is, and understand what your targets are, and understand when you have valuable information.
I think the second point.
Well, and I would add, if I may, because I've heard variations of this at many conferences I've been to over the last couple years. All these companies should have been doing this already, but the reality is they haven't. And while you can, as the security professional, as the professional hacker pen tester, we can kind of snicker and laugh, but at some point it's going to fall back on us because we're the ones that knew better and should have been educating and directing our customers or the places where we work to start thinking more along those lines. I mean, we're just trying to push the bar forward. We think it should be there, and it should have been happening already. But let's start now. And let's educate the community out there of this is the way you really should do a pen test. This is what you should really be starting out considering and looking at.
And I think his second point ties into the first point where he says you got to show the results. I'm assuming it means the results to manage and get management's attention. And I think to get management's attention, you have to show a relation to business impact and understand the business. So I think those two are almost like the same point, right?
And he says the point of POC is here. And I agree. Show how you impacted the business.
Yes.
Or show how you could have impacted the business.
And I think it's Marcus Random, and to a large degree, we agree that you shouldn't necessarily have to see like proof that something could be exploited in order to address the problem.
Agreed.
Right? Like there are so many scenarios where many of us, all of us in Security Weekly could sit down with an organization and they could say, well, we've implemented Active Directory this way, or we've implemented our security architecture this way, and we can go, tick, like that could be a shining example of this. Mike Poore, who's one of the founders of In Guardians, where Larry works, has been there since the beginning of time.
2003, if not before.
And SANS instructor. And
former retired SANS
SANS instructor. This must have been during a class. I took classes with Mike.
Me too.
And during a class, he said, you know, one of my jobs today as a consultant is I review the security architecture for companies. And this one time they had this big printout, right? Like from a plotter, like gigantic printout of their network architecture. And Mike tells every story better than I could ever tell any story.
Mike is a brilliant storyteller.
Mike is one of the best storytellers that I think I've ever heard.
And I'll tell you something after
and
the show.
I'm not just saying that lightly. Like, he literally is one of the best storytellers I've ever heard. And he's like, I stroke my beard, and I'm like, and like, I'm totally thinking like Pai Mei, because he's into the kung fu thing too. Him and I have nerded on that many times in the past. And he's like, and he's like, what's that? And he's like, I dropped my pen like on the paper and made like a big circle,
big red circle.
And that was like the point of weakness in their architecture. And I totally believe that without a pen test, people like Mike, ourselves, and others can really do that for security architecture. And why do we need to go? I understand maybe why in some circumstances, but and to Marcus's point, who's been on the show talking about this years in the past, is like, we shouldn't have to prove it. Like, we're saying, here's the problem. We're saying these systems are vulnerable. This is the thing working at Tenable with Ron and company. Like, we don't have to prove it. We know these vulnerabilities exist. Let's just go fix them. Like, sure, we can prioritize it, but you know what? A lot of them are pretty easy to fix, or we can work into a process to fix them. So let's just go fix them. Why do we have to prove?
And maybe the pen tester only had about 90 minutes to interact with this particular thing before he had to move on to the next thing. But if determined attacker had 97 minutes, maybe they could have gotten in.
What's interesting in that scenario is you could spend more time trying to prove the problem and validate the problem in your organization than you could just fixing it in the first place. Bingo. That's what's frustrating.
Bingo.
Well, I echo your sentiments 1,000-fold. The same type of thing exists in the PCI world, where you're coming in as the expert and you're saying this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And of course, it's not always a pen test, but they always want to fight you tooth and nail over doing anything. But the whole part about, if they hire a pen tester and the pen tester does or doesn't do something, that's been annoying for decades. And I wish we could figure out a way as a community to, you've hired us because we're experts. Why don't you believe us?
Right.
It's depressing how often you have to, like, all right, if you want me to prove it, I'll prove it.
Yeah. But I think the next point, Jeff, to kind of dovetail off of that is uncovering the undocumented. And here's where this is a great value point for a pen test is what are the unknowns? Like, I don't know the unknowns because they're unknown to me at this time, and if we can uncover those, then I can... it's not necessarily like I need to sound the alarm and every unknown is the highest risk. No, I want to know what I don't know about so that I can prioritize it. Maybe it's something I don't really pay attention to, but maybe it's something I'm like, holy shit, like Larry just told us this, and like, hold on, everyone drop everything, let's go fix this.
My problem is that uncovering the undocumented, you run something like Nessus in your environment, and you're going to uncover the undocumented. It shouldn't be my job to figure that out.
Potentially. No, but look at our previous segment, Larry, where we're talking about advanced reconnaissance techniques where it could be a completely different domain name, right? Because Nessus, it's funny we talked about Tenable at the beginning of the right? Like, Nessus only knows about...
Sure.
I mean, sure, they have other technologies, but let's just take Nessus for an example. Nessus only knows about what you tell it. And if you have a completely different domain... that maybe you didn't know about.
IP range.
I know, or an IP range.
Okay, fair enough.
But even that domain pivot, I think, is important because this is our asset. We just didn't know.
Okay.
And I never added it into the scanner because I didn't know it was there, and it was completely different. IP address range and domain, I had no idea.
And a lot of that can be accomplished through the non-probing, the non-touching, to use Chris's terminology, reconnaissance type of activities. I mean, and that can often be more fruitful, I think, because, even if you're just, doing let's say you're running Nessus and you expand the boundaries a little bit just to see, it's still
Keep
kind
going.
of
I'm gonna get beer.
miss.
Hold on, I'll be right back.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, get me one while you're there. Please do.
Yeah, get me one too. there's almost an endless array of ways that you can discover things. But to me, if you're having conversations about the business processes, what are you doing? I mean, I've had customers for years and years and years, and think we've covered everything. And granted, it was sort of hands off from a PCI perspective. Where else are you taking credit cards? And it's just amazing how many innocuous questions you might ask, where somebody all of a sudden the light bulb goes off and says, "Oh, we've got this thing over here. Are you talking about that?" And it uncovers this whole new business process, this whole new line of business that hadn't been on anybody's radar screen before. And it's more art than science. You just have you just have to keep asking. I'm talking from a non-technical perspective, but asking the probing questions, being inquisitive. If they say we don't do that, I always assume they do, and I just have to find it. If they say we don't store that information, oh, we don't do anything over there. Oh, all this is I mean, I guess it's. Hopefully you'd all agree with this. I mean, part of what we do as professionals, I think we have a certain amount of built-in skepticism about what people tell us, and that's what helps us to discover these problems in the first place, right?
So moving on, the sum of vulnerabilities, load owned.
Sure.
Done.
Yes. I get that.
Yep. Highly personalized tool set. I think we talked about that with Chris.
Chris did a great. I mean, Chris really gives some great examples of that particular point right there. Yeah.
Then the last one, custom payloads and end days.
What's end days? Is that like 0 days?
0 days, but n minus 2 days, 5 days, 30 days, 60 days. Bam. That's the article right there.
I think the end days is pretty prolific, to be honest with you.
Custom payloads and end days.
Because it's not a 0 day.
Bam.
Patches could be released. In typical enterprises, for a lot of things, I mean, they're plus 30 days to get the patch out, and that's a problem.
And even at the end days
potentially that's a problem. You shouldn't say a problem 100% of the time. It is a problem.
And I'd argue end days also...
It's actually a vulnerability by definition.
I agree. I agree with Jeff.
And I'd also argue end days includes living off the land. By using tools that that are there as intended,
right?
They are management utilities like PowerShell that are potentially extremely hard to detect depending on your detection capabilities.
And I'm telling you right now, after Black Hat in a couple of weeks, there's going to be more of that stuff. Just a precursor to that in terms of living off the land and exploiting things that are there without really having a vulnerability necessarily. I agree with Jeff. Before it's disclosed, it is a 0 day. We can make the distinction between a 0 day vulnerability and a 0 day exploit, certainly. Once there is a patch that is public, I would say, it has to be public, it is a vulnerability. In my
and some cases, that vulnerability may be a feature that they don't want to make go away.
Well, and those are those are the ones that don't get CVEs. Totally. I mean, we just talked about Active Directory today for an hour, and I think the majority of what we talked about, Larry, was not anything that Microsoft or even the community would deem like a 0 day or a vulnerability. Like, we're talking about a specific bug in software or hardware, firmware, whatever, right? That leads to a security vulnerability. In this case, we're talking about is you're just taking advantage of how things work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I would add too, not just features, but very often for many companies, it's a part of the business process that they feel is too mission critical to take it offline to fix, or they don't have the fix for it, or they don't want to spend the money, or there's a million reasons we can't fix it.
Yep. A million reasons.
Larry, do you have stories in there that you...
I have two that I wanted to specifically address. One of them is...
Russian hackers. That was your rant. That's where I want to go.
Yes.
Russian hackers are in our ICS systems. All over the news.
All over the news.
Basically, I covered this. I'm like, yeah. And guess what? we're all in Russian ICS systems, from what I understand.
So,
From my unscientific research, what I understand is that we're kind of at like a standoff. Like, we've gained a foothold in other countries may have gained a foothold into us. Neither side wants to act. We've all gained a foothold into. Maybe that's just a Hollywood script. I don't know. That's just what I'm observing. I don't know if that's necessarily what I believe, but that's what I'm observing.
Please allow me to retort.
Please do, Larry. Please have some facts and things that make sense.
So, I was amazed that the NSA came out with this article that was stating that 100 to 150, depending on the source that you read, utilities had been compromised by the Russians and that had some sort of infiltration from the Russians. And this is just the Russians. Forget everybody else. This is just the Russians.
What about Iran?
Don't know. This is the Russians.
What about China?
Don't know. This is just the Russians, right? So
what about North Korea?
100 to 150.
It's budget season, by the way.
Instances of compromise and ongoing compromise and over the last so many years, and this was disclosed publicly. It had been disclosed to those individual energy providers, so on forth and so on. And the big thing is that you talk about the grid, and it's not a grid. It's an interconnection of a bunch of small systems that small systems can fail. And if you get a bunch...
Isn't that a grid?
Yeah. It's
a grid.
It's a grid. But people think about it as a grid. It's a boom. It's a big thing. And if one component fails, the whole thing goes away. No, it's not like that. But if you have 100 or 150 of those components fail in lots of locations, bad things happen all over the place. It's a distributed type of thing, like the internet.
It's a grid.
It's a grid. It's like the internet. People don't get this.
There is a little bit of redundancy in there.
A little bit, but people don't get this. And my thing is that 2 years ago, Ted Koppel released a book called Lights Out, and Ted Koppel went down this thing about cybersecurity in the ICS space, and specifically around power companies that said, we're all fucked. TLDR, we're all fucked. And then he went down the path of, prepping, and he went a little bit off reservation. But it was basically along the lines of all these power plants and ICS and power grid and stuff is all connected to the internet, and we're all fucked. And I got to read his book early. CBS Sunday Morning came to my house and interviewed me.
Oh, I remember that.
And my basic tenet and that they captured at the output of the article was, at the output of the show was, if you don't think that Russia is in our power grid and we are in theirs, you're deluding yourself. You're insane.
So subscribe to my theory. This is, like I said, it's unscientific research, but all the information that I've consumed and put together, I've come to the same conclusion. I can't prove that, without beyond a reasonable doubt that we're in Russia's power system and Russians in our power system. Let me finish. Larry, then Jeff.
Let me finish. I said, basically, Russia was in our shit. We're in Russia's shit. We're in everybody's shit, and everybody's in our shit.
They all up in our shit.
We're all up in everybody's shit. Right? Seriously, that was what I said. And indirectly, I got shit from everybody in our community. Right? Exactly.
I just can't get over
I got shit everybody from our community. And Ted Koppel got everybody shit from our community that said, there's no way. There's no way. We'd know about it. From some of the best ICS defenders on the planet. And I said, and my comment was, I call your bluff. And guess what? This report comes out. And the report comes out, I call your bluff, and who's right?
What's interesting is I was giving a training class.
I thought you said I was next, Paul.
Sorry, hold on, quick, Jeff. I just want to dovetail what Larry was saying. I used the word dovetail twice in one segment. That might be a record, but I was teaching a class to folks who worked for industrial control systems companies on IoT security. I said largely the industry, and the public hasn't paid attention because there hasn't been any significant hacks. There's been a couple of examples, and they're like, no, there's been lots of hacks. And I was like, all right, you know what? Everyone pack up. I need to go to the bar. Like, I'm sorry. Like, that's just frightening. Sorry, Jeff.
In the olden days, it was called the Cold War, and the scenario that you're describing is called mutually assured destruction.
Yes, absolutely, Jeff. I totally agree. That it is the same thing.
So Jeff,
exactly the same
am I wrong?
No, I don't think you're wrong at all.
And you know what? Now the NSA comes out and proves at least one-way assured destruction.
Also, we had Star Wars back then.
Also, it's the budget season for the government. So
also, what do we have today? What did Trump declare? The cyber troopers, stormtroopers.
Please, no, just don't.
Is that just like Star Wars?
Space troopers, yeah.
Space troopers.
Space troopers.
Space Force?
Space Force.
Wasn't that a movie?
Space Force.
It was.
Space Troop. Was it Space Troop?
Camp, Space Balls.
What was Starship Troopers? Right. Where they kill the arachnids and stuff. That was an awesome. Neil Patrick Harris was in it. Yes, and he was in Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle is the best freaking cameo of Neil Patrick Harris ever.
May I off reservation for 30 seconds here? My wife and I, when we were dating, we moved into our first apartment together.
This is a segue.
One of the first movies we ever watched together was Starship Troopers.
I thought you were saying Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle because that's an awesome movie.
And
even better, Starship Troopers.
We put the movie on.
But the weird scene in Starship Troopers.
No. We get to the opening credits, and it goes into the opening of the movie, and I fall asleep. And she watches the entire. She watches the entire.
You were on a date. You were on a date.
We lived together.
Okay, so you weren't married yet.
This is the first. Okay. This is the first movie we watched in our apartment when we first moved in together before we got married.
I gotcha. You fell asleep.
I fell asleep. She watched
Party
the entire
animal. You are.
She watched the entire fucking movie. The movie was over, and she's like, "Man, that sucked." I'm like, "Really?" I didn't make it past the opening scene of the movie.
Have you gone back and watched the movie since?
No.
Even better.
No.
It is a great movie. I was going to say there's a scene where like there's a co-ed shower.
Just because of that, I don't want to know. All right.
You should go watch the movie.
30 seconds.
That's your homework. That's your homework.
Starship Troopers.
Where are we going next? Jeff, were you going to talk? I don't.
Jeff, please do.
I've lost control of the show.
I do have one more rant.
I spoke mutually assured destruction. We can move on.
Oh, okay.
And Jeff, I agree. And
where do we go? We were talking about Larry stories. And then
OSCP.
No,
that's my next one.
We should talk
OSCP. OSCP did something really interesting.
Oh, no, wait. Now I do want to talk about this now that I read it, Larry.
So OSCP, as of August 15th, I believe it's August 15th, all of the exams that they sell for their OSCP exam, just the OSCP
this
currently.
Is offensive security OSCP.
Offensive security OSCP is
highly regarded certification. No joke.
Yep.
Totally awesome.
Me, as a SANS 1099 contract employee, teachers for SANS, very respected. Don't have one. Don't know if I could get one. Type of thing. They're concerned about cheating.
And, dude,
agreed.
You and I have worked for SANS for a friggin' in some capacity, been involved with SANS probably for around the same time, probably 15 years.
You got me started on the SANS track.
But like cheating and ripping off course material is a concern when you're in the, and you have to address those issues.
Yep.
So I totally get it. Yep. You don't want people cheating.
Absolutely.
You don't want people ripping off your stuff. That's a huge concern in security training. Yep. I agree.
So
I have a silly question for you.
Yes.
As a hacker, define cheating.
Unfair advantage, I guess. Is that part of it?
So thinking about these certifications, using someone else's answers to answer the question when you can't demonstrate it yourself.
Yeah, I think, Jeff, what Larry's really alluding to is,
in this case,
people that allowing people to obtain the certification that did so by certain circumstances that they haven't demonstrated their knowledge. In other words, they have the certification, but you know that they circumvented something to prove, like, it's a proof that you have knowledge, and if you didn't go through the process and prove you have that knowledge, it's cheating. And that I think that definition could cover a lot of different
So we're
aspects.
not talking about Kobayashi Maru.
No.
We're talking about, you know, buying somebody else's answers or getting somebody else to take the test.
An unfair advantage, but also that it basically would make you a poser, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're trying to prevent that. I mean, SANS and offensive security both, like, they want to make, and it's the integrity of the certification and just a morals thing. If you got it, you got to earn the certification. You can't circumvent the process.
But you understand there's a certain irony because
there
the
is.
business that we're in,
true, very true,
cheating.
Jeff. Yes, absolutely. I completely agree. There's not even a fine line between hacking and cheating. Like, really, in a lot of circumstances, they're the same thing. You got to throw ethics into the mix in that I have permission to basically cheat people or hack people, right? I mean, that's really the only distinction I would make.
Yeah. Right. So there's two things that really interesting came up for me about this. I totally get why they want to do the proctor exams, but the OSCP doesn't lend itself to
because it's kind of like a self-study.
It's and it's potentially a 3-day, 72-hour exam because you're doing live hacking on live systems, and you have to develop exploits and so forth and so on. How the hell do you do that in a proctored environment? You can't.
I mean, you could. I mean,
you can't.
Cisco certainly, to get their CCIE certifications, you got to sit through a proctored exam, and you got to sit through. At one time, it was a 1-day lab where they would set up an environment you got to do stuff with. But how do you do that when it's a remote?
So
when you want to allow for more people,
how do you hack naked?
So here's the thing.
You remove your clothes, Jeff.
The OSCP exam is a 72.
They want it to be on camera.
From my understanding, is a 72-hour thing, and it is 72 hours in its entirety, and you can participate 72 hours, and people will stay up for 72 hours and do the exam because they're badass, and that's real world. That's what we do, and I get that. So what they do is that they have this client that enables a webcam that potentially they ask the people that are proctoring your exam to scan your environment, take your webcam, show onto your desk, blah, 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 so that so we can potentially choose it to assess that you're not cheating by a real human. If you need to take a break, if you need to stop and go to the bathroom, you need to leave the room.
In 72 hours, you're going to need to stop and go to the bathroom.
It's one of those.
Sorry.
Chat through the thing. Let us know. We may ask you to rescan your environment based on human decision. If you need to stop and go to sleep, great. When you come back up, we may ask you to scan your environment with the webcam. We're going to watch you. They're going to do screen sharing.
Ooh.
You can do webcam and screen sharing on separate computers. Well, all these good things. I think they've really done a good job about thinking about this.
That's interesting. I mean, they're preserving the integrity of the...
I feel like there's a Black Mirror episode in this.
I agree, Jeff.
There's two things that are very interesting to me. One, their code of ethics and all their privacy things says, yes, we will stream video while you're taking the exam, screen and environment, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to the Philippines. To our employees in the Philippines. Not contracted employees, our employees in the Philippines. And my question is, has anyone read Cryptonomicon?
I'm okay with that as long as they're telling you that they're doing it.
They are telling you that they're doing it, and they tell you what their privacy policy is and for how long they're retaining it.
Sure, and so that means if you're going to take the exam, like you said, I'm going to go into a room that if there's anything in there that I don't want someone else to see, I can remove that from the room, go into a room
it's that up in front.
Right? Like it's a clean room. I'm going to go take the exam. It's a clean. It's kind of like simulating I'm going to go to a facility that's controlled to take the environment. They're basically leaving it to you to say, all right, create your clean facility. We just want to make sure you're not cheating. And if you have no intention of cheating and you can create that clean environment,
I think for bonus points, extra credit, you ought to figure out how to game the system, somehow loop the video, do something.
I agree, Jeff. It's a hacking exam. There should be points for that.
It might just be part of the exam.
Right.
We're putting this crazy thing out there. What are you going to do with it?
Of course, question 1 was entirely about my joke about the Cryptonomicon. Number 2. They have a question in their FAQ about dress code. And their dress code specifically states, along the lines of, not specifically states, along the lines says, please do wear shirt, pants, burqa, covering, sari, whatever you choose. If you were to answer the door to greet your mailman, please consider wearing that.
Kind of a bad rule. Some people probably do answer the door naked for their mailman.
My answer is...
Or mail person.
My answer is, how dare they limit my need to hack naked?
It's true. I agree with that. Again, I think they're trying to simulate the proctored environment. So if you were to go to a training facility...
Would you show up naked?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not.
I get where they're going, but... Hack naked.
Hack naked. It
hack
does.
Naked. Come on.
For that 72 hours, put some clothes on. The rest of the time, once you get your certification, and you get a job with a pen testing company, dude, you can totally hack naked.
For 72 hours, put on some pants. You don't have to wear a shirt.
Throw some shorts on, dude. Like, what's the big deal? Throw some shorts on.
A male.
I don't care.
I mean,
put on some pants.
I love to hack. I love to hack naked because we came with the slogan. But I tell you what, like in the summer or in the winter, like you got to have some. You don't want to stick to the chair. That's what I'm saying.
But that's why you have a cloth chair, not leather.
True.
I have a cloth chair at home.
But for that 72 hours, we spent way too much time on this.
Do you know?
Way too much time.
Do you know how many times? Do you know how many times I've hacked naked?
I don't want to know.
Do you know how many times I've podcasted naked?
I don't want to know.
Do you know how many?
Do you have smart things yet, Larry?
I have a smart things. It is in the box currently, and it's an older version.
What's interesting is that Aaron is here for a few weeks. He's kind of like a intern. Like he just came here to just learn kind of stuff.
Yep, Aaron's awesome.
Aaron's awesome. Aaron has. We haven't even scratched the surface as stories that we can share with each other, and I guarantee it's going to get more and more interesting as time goes on. But especially in Vegas, when we might be under the influence of things.
Let's put it this way: I didn't know Aaron from Hole in the Wall, and
neither did I. I invited him to stay here for like a month too.
I get a Facebook friend request from him today, and I'm like, I'm going to ask, and I come in the door today, and I meet him, and I'm like. He's our people.
He's our yes.
I've known Aaron less than 45 minutes. He's our people.
And you totally hang out with him naked.
Yeah.
Right? Like
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
I think he's totally social. He's going to like be writing like a book after this about what goes on here at security.
Aaron's my people. I've known him 45 minutes.
And we'd be happy about it. We're like, yeah, Aaron, write your book. Like it's totally fine, dude. Yeah. So Aaron's hooking into some smart things. Samsung. We have a smart things here in the studio. And it was kind of like a project that I had bought some stuff and put it on hold. I had the Smart Things device. Like it's stuff it's like my Amazon Lightning deal or Prime Day or Black Friday stuff. Like I just buy stuff I think I might need in the future. And one of those was a Smart Things.
I have a basement full of that.
Yeah. One of those was a Smart Things for the office, including a whole shitload of sensors. And so Aaron's like, dude, like what can I help you with? I'm like, dude, you want to like help us with our Smart Things implementation? I'm like, that sounds weird, but for our insurance, we have an alarm system. Like I told him, we have the alarm system, and we do. It's in boxes. I haven't installed it yet. I'm like, why don't you install it for us? So because like I want to actually have it implemented for our insurance. Like I don't want to be that guy or that person that's like, oh yeah, we got PCI, we got a firewall and they just ran a cable through it. And all
PCI says all your traffic must go through a firewall, so you buy a firewall, you drill a hole through it, and pass a cable through it.
And that's a Mike Poor story, by the way.
It does
and
not
he tells
say
it way
that.
better than we do. So anyway, I've told Aaron, I'm like, help us with Smart Things. We've ordered more devices as well because we realized that some of we didn't have enough of this one. I'm like, I really want to cover the Windows. We ordered some Windows sensors. But now today on the show we're covering that a researcher finds 20 flaws in Samsung SmartThings Hub controller, opening up supported third-party smart home devices to attack. Cisco Talos researchers are the ones that published this research. It's Linux-based firmware. Their device supports Zigbee and Z-Wave and Bluetooth, which is why, again, we get the security versus usability. I like SmartThings, even though it's Samsung. Yep. God damn, say what the usability.
So anyone that finds any bugs in Security Weekly's implementation will get free T-shirts and swag.
Sure,
because we have a bug bounty.
It wouldn't be that difficult to physically. You have to physically come here.
The parking lot's pretty small.
Yeah, come right in the parking lot.
Come
like
on
you're
up.
gonna find our SmartThings. It's there.
Come on in. We'll give you a beer.
Sure.
Yeah, Paul, I'm gonna put words in your mouth, and I will do the Josh Wright thing. If you're gonna come to my house and you're gonna hack my Wi-Fi, something clever. Family movie night is the password. If you're going to go to Josh's house, show up. Don't steal my Wi-Fi. Knock on the door. Let's have some coffee. Let's talk.
Yeah, let's come in, have some coffee, have some beer, have a cigar, like whatever you're into. That's fine.
Hack my shit. We'll give you T-shirts, beer, whatever.
So yeah, I don't know what these 20 vulnerabilities are. I'm curious to dig into them and see. I did see something about a firmware update. Aaron and I actually are working together on, updating and sharing access to SmartThings. Aaron showed me, like, it was really funny. I was looking at how we make this particular sensor work with SmartThings.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I don't know what the fuck these instructions are saying. I'm like, it's telling me to go to the screen and hit edit. And I'm like, the only thing I know of in SmartThings is the mobile app. I'm like, there's no web interface for SmartThings. Like, I've searched. I'm like, can you guys give me a web interface? Because, like, when I'm doing a massive install like Aaron's doing right now, like a web interface would be awesome because I don't want to do all that bullshit on my phone. Yep. And we're trying to pair the devices. And there's like a specific URL. It's like graph.api.smartthings.com. And it gives you a full web interface to your SmartThings. He's like, He's like, Paul, those were the instructions you were looking at? Was for this like unpublished URL. And I logged in. I'm like, oh, now the instructions make perfect fucking sense. I'm like, I go to edit and now I can change the device. So some devices that like say they work with SmartThings, some work out of the box with the mobile app. Other ones you have to go into this weird web interface that's not published really anywhere, very few places, and change the device profile.
Works with Amazon Echo.
Right.
That's the...
Yeah, it works with Amazon Echo, but you can write your own Python script to interface with the API. SmartThings it has some stuff like that too, like things that most of the things that don't say work with SmartThings, some people have integrated. You got to like go to some dude's GitHub and get the code.
You've got to have a Raspberry Pi that does it.
In any case, I don't know. That's what I chose to use as our security system here for physical security here at the studio. For better or for worse, it provides, I don't know. It's cool stuff. Security-wise, it has issues as have just been published recently. So make sure you keep up to date with firmware, certainly on your SmartThings device. We do use it here. Door, window, motion sensors. And I ordered a couple of plugs. So as many know, we produce a cigar podcast.
Yeah.
And we can smoke in our studios. Largely so we can support our cigar podcast, not just to do the show, but like you got to smoke cigars and review them too, so we can smoke in our studio. And so we've got fans, and we mounted 3 fans in the front of the other side of the studio. They're controlled by SmartThings now.
Nice.
So like the schedule's automatic. Like when we come in the morning, the fans automatically kick on. And it's really my vision. Aaron's implementing my vision for SmartThings here at the studio and doing things like that. But make sure you're updated on firmware. It's important.
As we've talked about in the past, I've decided to go down the Amazon route for that, and I've got some Pi stuff going on. I've got some Philips Hue bulbs and so forth.
Dude, I'm curious to see what you think of SmartThings. You should pick up a device.
I have one.
Okay, so
it's a work thing for us to hack
mess around with it. Yeah,
and,
it's cool.
And absolutely, I really like the Amazon stuff. And I've got a server and I've got stuff, and I have one of those Billy Bass fish in my office.
Yeah,
that's connected to a Pi that does all the stuff. And I spent a day with Ed.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, okay.
And it was awesome. And I can do
my
Alexa, turn on the fish. and the Billy Bass goes off.
Security aside, I like the functionality where SmartThings talks to the Echo platform.
Yep.
And allows you to issue voice commands to turn your lights on. And I have to say, since I've implemented that feature, that's the most used feature in my house, between myself and all of my family members, wife and kids included, will issue voice commands to turn lights on and off. You know, I mean, those of us that have kids know, and those of us that have been kids, which are all of us, right? We've all been afraid of the dark when we were a kid at a certain point in time. And to issue a voice command to say, turn on your child's lamp, and then teach them to issue the same command.
Alexa, turn on my nightlight.
Yeah, that's awesome, right? And so we've come up with some pretty creative ways to make that happen in our house. And by creative, I mean my older two sons kind of pseudo share a bedroom. So they had a really large, like narrow but long bedroom in my house, and we built a wall in between it with a barn door.
Nice.
So we could put kitty, and there was actually a closet on either side.
Is that the one in the front of the house?
In the front of the house, on the second floor. And so we put a wall, a half wall with a barn door to complete it. So they both had their rooms. The problem is, if you put an Amazon, I won't say the keyword, but if you put an Amazon device in each room and you use the same keyword to activate them, they're both going to activate and get really confused. But in Amazon, you can say that the keyword is Echo
computer
versus the female first name that they use to so in one son's room the keyword is Echo and the other son's room is the default, so they can both control their devices.
Computer, Earl Grey tea, hot.
And I think you can say it's computer.
Yes, you can set it to computer.
Yes. So
and we had that just happen recently. That I have an Echo in my office and we have one in the kitchen, and they're relatively close together. My wife told Amazon to do something. She told Alexa to do something, and it triggered both of them. And my office didn't quite hear it right.
Yeah, so it gets confused.
And I just never mind.
What's nice is in one son, my older son has a TV in his room, and my middle son has the Echo Show, which is creepy. And I've gone through great lengths to turn off as much functionality as possible on that to limit, you know, what can happen making calls and video calls and such. But he can actually issue commands to watch his TV shows.
Nice.
Which is pretty nice. But I had to separate the keyword.
Yeah, and that was interesting. So my we totally off reservation. Oldest daughter, 10, has a friend sleepover last night, and they come downstairs at about 10 o'clock and said, "Daddy, we want to watch a movie." Like, no. Go up to your room. You've got a TV in your room. You've got Amazon. You've got Netflix. Go find a movie to watch. Go. And they did. They found a movie to watch. And that's exactly what I've been doing a lot.
Now,
when I
monitoring
travel.
that is interesting. It's one of the things Adrian Santabria and I have been talking about is how do you monitor that. And I catch my kids all the time. And
me too.
And I'm like, dude, like, you know what Dad does for a living? Like, do you think I'm not gonna see that kind of stuff?
That was when the 10-year-old got her TV in her room. She does not have cable, whatever is set up in her room. She has all the online content through her Amazon device. And I said, so, day we hooked it up, I said, we're trusting you, and I can see everything that you're doing. So if you choose to watch Man in the High Castle, I'll know. Whatever you do on this device, I know. I didn't really know whether I knew or not. Half an hour later, it says that she installed a game on her Amazon device. And about half an hour later, come up and says, "Oh, how's such and such a game?" And she's like, "What? You thought I was kidding?"
Yeah, like
it took that one.
Do you know what Daddy does for a living?
And I got an email that said, "Oh, thank you for installing such and such a game on your Amazon device." And I'm like, "Cool."
I've got the Circle device on my network, which helps with just some filtering, but the filtering's not great because you just have to observe, right? Like, we have a lot of technology, but part of it too is also like you gotta just watch what your kids are doing. In other words, when you walk in the room and you see them scramble for the remote and change the channel or do something, I'm like, dude, like, I know what you're watching.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to be the world's most brilliant security engineer to know that when I walk in the room and you're changing the channel, that you're watching something you're not supposed to know. By the way, when I turn it back on and I watch your history, I know what you're watching. So, like, knock that crap off. And I think that there's something to be said from a security perspective for having their entertainment devices and computers in plain view, right? So when you set up a computer, my oldest son and I are talking about finally building a gaming PC, you know, for the family, mostly for him. I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing that in my office where we used to do the podcast in my house. Like, we're doing that in, like, the main open area. It just, so you're playing games, like, whatever. Yeah. But you're not doing anything you're not supposed to because it's in plain view of anyone that walks in the house, right? And there's something to be said for that kind of almost crowdsourced security.
And
right?
And we've told our 10-year-old that we will see everything that is on your device.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We're trusting you to do what's responsible on your device, and you can text with your friends. You can only do iMessage or the iMessage with your friends and so forth because you doesn't have cell service, and you can do FaceTime and so forth and so on. We can't see your FaceTime stuff, but we know who you're FaceTiming with, and we know what the contents of the messages you are. She says, "How do you know that?" And I said, "When you go to bed at night and you put your iPad on the charger, I review your messages." And and it was very much, I was upfront with her. I am going to read your stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the other parents came to us and said, "We think that what Corinne and some of the other girls are doing are inappropriate, that they're sharing personal stuff." And I went back and read the messages. And I said, they are sharing personal stuff, but it is nothing that they didn't exchange in person, like the name of their dog.
Yeah.
Or that the dog is sick, or that they really like this TV show, or that dad pooped today. This is not stuff you should be concerned about. And they were like, "Oh, somebody's on top of that?" I'm like, "I'm on top of that." So
just wait till they're 12, 13, 14.
I got 2 years for that with one of them for 12, and it's going to be the same way.
Before we round out,
you like it or daddy takes it away.
Before we round out the show,
we had one rule at our house: there was no expectation of privacy because they knew where daddy worked.
Right?
Yep. Yes. One more to round it out.
Serial killer electrocutes himself in a jail sex act. If this is not like karma, I don't know what is. So there was a convicted serial killer.
Titillating, yes.
It is titillating. He was in jail. He was 62. He was known as the Aachen Strangler.
Aachen Strangler.
Aachen Strangler basically lured women who were hitchhiking and murdered them. Convicted, went to jail. And let me see if I can find the best part. Not the best part, but I guess it is the best part of this story. That in prison while awaiting, I think he was on death row, he removed a cable from his bedside table lamp, wound it around his nipples and penis, and stuck the end into a power socket, ultimately killing himself.
Yep.
If that's not karma, I don't know what is. Taxpayers no longer had to pay for this person to be in prison any longer.
Yep.
And this is something that Doug White, if you catch up with Doug White and Black Hat and
Has
DEF CON,
tried? What?
No, it's called stereo stimming, but it's also called
electrostimulation.
Electrostimulation. Thank you, Larry. Electrostimulation was the ultimate demise of this person who was a serial killer, which, you know.
If you think about this, he's in Germany, 220 volts at the outlet, AC, as opposed to our 110 AC and here in the U.S. And if he's attaching
that is the nerdiest assessment of this story that we could possibly have, Larry.
It's going to get nerdier. And if he's attaching it to both of his nipples, 220 volts AC across his nipples, passing through his chest.
How many amps and ohms is that, Larry?
Don't know. But he is passing that energy across his heart.
Yes, you are absolutely correct.
Creating an afibrillation problem.
Right? Yeah, it's like someone cranked the paddles too high and shocked them.
Like, seriously,
Yeah.
I've been there and in our old house.
Kids, don't try this at
Yeah.
home.
Our old house, positive was to ground in the house, and I went to go connect a cable TV cable, and I did this, 110 volts from right hand to left hand, and straight across my heart.
I did that in my old house that we did podcasts in, right?
Yep.
And like I didn't have ground plugs in a lot of the houses because it was like a 50-year-old plus house, and like I leaned against a metal rack, and the other side of my shoulder like touched like the metal frame to the furnace. I was like, and my head like was tingly.
You had hair then? Yes, you had
around
hair
then. For my wedding.
You had hair then.
I had hair.
You had hair then.
So my hair was probably singeing, and my head really hurt and was tingly. Like I had a really bad headache. Like a headache, like not like a typical headache, but like my scalp was on fire.
You're lucky your heart didn't hurt.
Yeah.
Because when I had that happen, my heart hurt. My chest hurt.
I was much younger then. Now that was probably the end of me. But back then I was like, that really sucked. I got to go sit down for a few minutes and then I'm fine.
Yeah, that was Don't do that.
Don't. Electricity.
One side to the other is bad. If you're going to work in the panel,
ground is awesome.
One hand behind your back, one hand at a time.
Yeah. Because when you're the ground, it's bad.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I was the ground.
Yep.
Awful.
Been there.
Larry was the ground.
Gentlemen, you're having too much fun with this, but I'm pretty sure the sun's coming up in Norway.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. and in Germany, where this guy got electrocuted.
We're just
ranting. And in Germany.
Jeff and Larry, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching this edition of Paul's Security Weekly. See everyone next time.